Good evening. Welcome to Students Dominate Math. My name is Mr. Hendricks, and I'm a school teacher from Providence St. Mel School. This is a live call-in interactive show brought to you through the facilities of CAN TV. I'd like for you to call in to the number 312-738-1060 for all of your math questions, all of the questions that you have from algebra to geometry to pre-calculus and calculus. For the next half an hour, I want to serve as your math tutor. I'm your personal tutor. I know you might not be used to calling in for anything math related over the television, but we are inviting you right now to call in the number 738-1060, and we'll do the best that we can to entertain all of your questions and give you a thorough understanding of whatever topics that you have found challenging over the years, whatever topics that you have coming up in your tests this week or next week, whatever topics that might be in an upcoming final exam or an ACT, whatever math-related question you have, I would be so happy if you called into the number on the screen and I could assist you in whatever way possible. So the way we run the program is if you don't call in, we have a topic that we have specially planned for today that we're going to work on. And it'd be a continuation of the topic that we discussed last week. And it's a very important topic that whatever level of math that you're in, this topic today applies. Math is very much foundational. If you've got a strong foundation, you can build on that foundation, and you can tackle some very, very advanced level topics, but your foundation must be strong in order to perform at a high level in advanced class. So one of the foundational ideas in math that students sometimes find challenging is the idea of the order of operations, and we talked about that last week. This idea of the order of operations, this idea of the acronym. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You might ask the question, what does please excuse my dear Aunt Sally have to do with math? One of the great ways that I've learned that children learn is they learn with acronyms. This idea of this expression, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, they'll remember that. They'll remember please excuse my dear Aunt Sally before they remember this. They'll remember please excuse my dear Aunt Sally before they remember this acronym. Or they'll remember the acronym, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, before they remember parentheses. That's where the please comes in. Sorry about that. That's where the please comes in. And then they'll remember excuse before they remember exponents. Exponents. So the please excuse, that's an acronym to help you remember exponents. The E in excuse is to help you remember exponents. My, that's to help you remember multiplication. Multiplication. Dear is to help you remember division. And aunt is to help you remember addition. And Sally is to help you to remember the operation subtraction. All right. And I'm going to put a box around multiplication and division. and another box around addition and subtraction, because addition does not always come before subtraction. You have to handle these operations from left to right. From left to right. Same thing with multiplication and division. Multiplication does not come before division all of the time. You have to tackle the problem from left to right. So let's just practice a little bit so that I know that you understand what I mean by multiplication does not always come before division. So if you have only multiplication and division, let's say you have 2 divided by 2 times 4. If you have 2 divided by 2 times 4, the order of operations is not to be tackled in the order of the acronym. You are not to tackle any order of operations problem in the order of the acronym. This does not mean do parentheses first, exponents, and then multiplication. All right, it means to follow the order of operations, which says to tackle the problem from the left side to the right side. When you're dealing with multiplication division, you're to tackle the problem from the left side of the problem to the right side of the problem. Meaning that just because it says please excuse my for multiplication does not mean that you're to multiply the 2 times the 4 first. You're to handle either multiplication or division, meaning that you are to look at this problem from the left to the right. You see that the division comes first. You end up with 2 divided by 2, which is 1. You bring down the times 4. I ask my students to, after they've done one operation, you bring that down and bring the rest of the problem down. That's forcing you to do one step at a time. Then you multiply 1 times 4 to get 4, and then that's your final answer. This is good. You'll dominate your tests if you do that. Let me show you what's bad. A lot of times I like to show my students what's the wrong thing to do, because sometimes that helps them to, they say, hey, well, wait a minute, that's what I would have done. Or it tells them up front, if they know, hey, wait a minute, that's what I would have, hey, let me show you the wrong thing to do. This is 2 divided by 2 times 4. If you take the 2 times the 4 to get 8, you end up with 2 divided by 8. Now this is bad. What I'm doing is very, very bad. And then 2 divided by 8, that's just a fraction, which simplifies to 1/4, which is the same thing as 0.25. Or some people might think that 2 divided by 8 is 4. That's even worse. Not only did you do the wrong operation, some people might say this is 4. Well, not only did you do the wrong operation first, but you didn't divide 2 divided by 8 properly. 2 divided by 8 is not even 4. You shouldn't have even divided 2 divided by 8 in the first place. All right. So this is all bad. It's all wrong. But this is what a lot of students do. My experience is a lot of students don't truly understand. We don't evaluate order of operations problems in the order of the acronym. All right. The order of operations is telling you to go in a specific order that must be fully understood in order to dominate. I want you to call in the number 312-738-1060, and we can discuss whatever math questions that you have. These are the problems that I'm bringing to the table. I don't want you to call in. This show will be over in another 15 minutes. I don't want you to call in when it's too late, we can't give you the attention that you want, the attention that you deserve. I would be so grateful if you gave me the opportunity to serve as your math tutor. All right, so you call in the number 312-738-1060 and we'll help you. But in the meantime, I've got another problem where I'm going to ask you to evaluate this where you use the order of operations. All right, let's just jump into it. All right, here's another problem. All right, so let's see if we can make it so that we can see the order along with the problem. All right, so here we go. There's the order, and the problem I'll put right next to it. There we go. So we've got 4 divided by 3 to the second power times, that's a multiplication sign, times 2 minus 9 plus 6. Let's try that. Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to make it so you can see the order and the problem. Maybe if I put it down here. Well, maybe not. All right. Well, let's do the best we can. Now, what does the order say do? The order says tackle any kind of parentheses that you see. Evaluate anything inside the parentheses. It turns out that for this particular problem, there are no parentheses. There are no parentheses. So, what's the next thing in the order? It says evaluate any exponents. All right, so the way I like to work with my students is I like to tell them to do only one thing and bring everything else in your problem down. Now, if you begin to, well, I feel like doing multiplication right now, or hey, I feel like doing division now, you are not following the order of operations. Math is not about, well, in my opinion we should do this, and in my opinion we should do that, and my favorite thing to do is this. It has nothing to do, the way we evaluate these problems has nothing to do with what you feel comfortable doing. It has to do with what the order requires. The order requires that you look to do everything inside the parentheses. If there are no parentheses, you must do the exponents. So this exponent 3 to the second, some students think that 3 to the second means 3 times 2. If they wanted you to evaluate 3 times 2, they would have just written 3 times 2. 3 to the second does not mean 3 times 2. 3 to the second power means 3 multiplied by itself, which is 9. 9. So this is wrong. Sometimes I tell my students to write down the wrong thing so they won't do that on their homework. All right, so 3 to the second, that is 9, and would bring everything else down. 4 divided by 9 times 2 minus 9 plus 6. I did one operation, then I brought everything else down. Now, what's next? What's next after the order? It's not about my opinion, it's about what the order requires. After exponents, we don't have any more exponents to evaluate. You are to do either multiplication or division. I should put an or in here. Put an or in here. You are to either multiply or divide. How do you decide? How do you decide? In this problem, we have both division and multiplication. How do you decide which route to take? Do you take the route, well, hey, I feel like multiplying or I feel like dividing? It has nothing to do with your feelings. It has only to do with what the order requires. The order requires that if you have both multiplication and division, you're to evaluate the problem from the left to the right. Meaning that you are to take the 4 divided by the 9 and not the 9 times the 2. You take the 4 divided by the 9. All right? Why? Because we evaluate these kinds of problems not in the order of the acronym. We don't evaluate this in the order of an acronym, but in the order of operations, which requires left to right. So now we're going to take the 4 divided by the 9. Oh, there's a common mistake here. Some people think that 4 divided by 9, some people think that 4 divided by 9 is this, because they always want to put the larger number under the division sign. That's wrong. That's wrong. The 4 needs to be divided by the 9. This 4 needs to be divided by the 9. So the way I teach my students is I tell them to rewrite the number 4. The number 4 can be written, that's a 4, but that's also a 4. 4.0, that's also 4. All right, that's also 4. 4.0, that's 4. So I'm rewriting the 4 divided by 9. I bring that decimal straight up, and then 9 goes into 40. 9 can't go into 4, but 9 can go into 40. I brought that decimal straight up. That goes in 4 times. 9 times 4 is a 36. I subtract to get 4, and then you bring down a number. All right, we only have 5 minutes left. All right, so 9 can go into 40. Another 4 times, so let's just stick with that 0.44. So let's go back to our problem. We figured out what 4 divided by 9 was. All right, so 4 divided by 9, that's 0.44 times, I did that one operation, I'm going to bring everything else down, times 2 minus 9 plus 6. All right, so now we have we've done the division. Now we still need to multiply. All right, this step says look to either multiply or divide. We did the division because that's what came first. Now let's do some multiplication. We have 0.44 times 2. Let's go off to the side. 0.44 times, that's my times 2. All right. The way you multiply is it's not necessary to line up your decimals when you multiply. That's not necessary. So we get 88, and there are 2 decimal places here, and there are no decimal places down here. So that's a total of 2 decimal places that we move into our product. So we end up with 0.44 times 2, we got 0.88. And we bring that over here. We got 0.88. All right, we did one operation. And after you do one operation, I ask my students to bring everything down. Bring everything down. All right? So now we end up with 0.88 minus 9. It's sort of like 88 cents minus 9. Some people might think you can't subtract a decimal and a whole number like this, but you actually can. You're just going to end up with a negative answer. So you 0.88 minus 9, you end up having to subtract these 2 numbers. Let's go off to the side. You could add the opposite, or you could subtract these 2 numbers. You're going to end up with a negative answer. And let's subtract 9 minus 0.88. Let's do some borrowing here. Do some borrowing, that becomes a 2. Do some borrowing over here, that becomes an 8. All right, and you end up with 8.12 negative. All right, you get 8.12 negative. All right, so what we end up with here is negative 8.12 plus 6. 8.12 plus 6. We're going to end up with a negative result there. When you're adding and subtracting decimals, you have to line up your decimals. So you end up with a final answer that's a negative. Let's go off to the side and do that. So we end up with 8.12, and let's subtract the 6.0, sorry about that, 6.00. When you add and subtract decimals, these decimals must be lined up. But when you multiply decimals, when you're multiplying decimals, it's not necessary that the decimals are lined up. So you get 2.12. You get 2.12, but the final answer over here would be negative 2.12. Final answer. If you were to put all this in the calculator which follows the order of operation, you would get negative 2.12. That's all we have time for. I wish you'd have called in, but next week we'll be here 5:30 every Thursday, and we want you to call in, and we'll do the best we can to answer whatever questions you have in the area of math. We want to encourage all the students out there to put forth your best effort. School is a delayed return entity. You work hard now and you reap the benefits down the road. Put forth your best effort in school. Never quit, never give up. Go to your teachers, ask for help, and you will dominate math. God bless you. Have a good evening.